In our next lesson, lesson 7, we'll be looking at Autofill, custom list, and Smartfill. Let's start things off with Autofill. Autofill is a feature in Sheets that allows you to quickly populate your sheets with data when your data is a series. That is, there is a clear pattern to it, such as the days of the week, the months of the year, multiples of 2, counting numbers, etc. Depending on the pattern you want to generate, you will need to provide between 1 to 6 examples for sheets to accurately continue the series or sequence. 2 examples are usually sufficient though. Autofill also applies to the copying of formulas to other cells. It allows you to copy a formula you've entered in one cell to other cells that require the same calculation or analysis, and automatically changes the cell reference within the formula to match the needs of the destination cell. That is, if relative referencing is used, otherwise it just copies the formula. To use Autofill to populate your data, simply enter text, numbers, or dates in at least 2 cells, next to each other in a column or row. Highlight the cells containing the data you just entered. Drag the fill handle any number of cells down or across to autocomplete. In our example, we filled in counting numbers up to 14 and the months of the year. Next up, custom lists. In Sheets, when we talk about custom list, we are basically referring to drop-down list. There's currently no support for creating custom lists for sorting of data, although you can use the sort-n function to build a layered custom sorting list. That will take a bit of work. We'll therefore be looking at how to create a custom drop-down list. Later in this training, specifically Module 4, you'll be introduced to some advanced uses of drop-down lists in Sheets. And in Module 5, you'll be shown how to use a drop-down list for filtering a table and charts. To create a custom list, also known as drop-down list, select the cell or cells where you want to create the drop-down list. Click Data and then Data Validation. Now, for the criteria, pick either list from a range or list of items. These are the 2 options available for creating custom lists. The list from range option allows you to use a range of pre-existing data as your drop-down list items. This could be data on the same sheet or a different sheet within the same workbook. It is the more dynamic option, since making changes to the range employed automatically affects all instances of it. The list of items option allows you to enter the individual items as you create the drop-down list. The cells will have a down arrow which drops down to reveal the options when clicked. To remove the arrow, uncheck the box next to show drop-down list in cell. Entering data that doesn't match an item on the list produces a warning. If you want people to only enter items from the list, choose Reject Input next to On Invalid Data. You can then provide some information to guide users through the proper data entry process by choosing to show a validation message. Click on Save to finish creating your custom list. To make changes to your custom list, select the cell or range containing the list. On the menu bar, go to Data and select Data Validation. Alternatively, you can right-click and select Data Validation from the pop-up menu. To change the options listed, edit the items in the Items box and click Save to commit the changes. Note that this is for a list that was created using the List of Items options. To edit a list created from a range, simply edit the items in the range used, or change the range to the new set of data you want to use. To delete the list, select it, go to Data, Data Validation, and click on Remove Validation. We will take a look at Smartfill next. Smartfill is Google Sheets version of FlashFill. It makes data entry easy and smarter by filling in your data for you when there is a pattern. You can think of it as a smarter autofill. Just like with autofill, you start out a pattern of how you want to structure your data, and then Sheets will provide a preview of how it thinks you want to continue. And if it's right, then you can commit the changes. Unlike autofill, however, it works on data you've entered already and would like to perform some manipulations on. Smartfill is still new and is still being improved, so it may not recognize some things you're trying to do yet. Excel's flash fill is currently better at recognizing and filling in more scenarios, but Smartfill shows a lot of potential, especially given that Google is a leader in artificial intelligence and machine learning and has a large database to go on. One key difference between flash fill and Smartfill is that whereas flash fill just continues your data entry by filling in plain text, Smartfill actually does this by generating a formula that achieves your goal. This is very useful as it teaches you how to use the various functions, and from that, you can easily replicate a similar outcome elsewhere some other time. It also makes your data dynamic, so that changes made to your data automatically affects the new list created. To use Smartfill, first enter your data in Sheets. In any column next to your data, provide an example of how you want your data to be structured. Smartfill will provide a preview of how it thinks you would like to continue. Review it and click on the green check mark if the suggestion meets your needs. If it does not, click on the X to ignore. You can take a look at the formula being implemented to give the results you see by clicking on Show Formula. GIF A shows how the formulas generated for the first and last names compare. It is clear that the two formulas are different and each makes sense too. If we were to generate a formula ourselves, we probably would have come up with the same formula. Also take note of how the first entries were maintained as plain text, unlike the rest, which were actually filled in with the formula. In GIF B, we further demonstrate that the formula was indeed filled in for the rest of the cells. It is interesting to see that Smartfill adapts the formula to suit each cell, just like it does when you copy a formula to other cells. Also, we demonstrate the benefit of Smartfill's approach, specifically how it makes it dynamic. You can see that when the original data is altered, the generated list changes also, eliminating the need for you to go in and make further changes each time. Smartfill generates different formulas for different scenarios. In A, take note of the formula that was suggested by Smartfill. You can see that Smartfill generates a new formula that results in our desired outcome. In B, we carry out the same splitting of the full names into first and last names, but this is done on a different sheet and with headers. Take note of the formula Smartfill used here. It did a VLOOKUP of the data in the other sheets because it realized the data was the same, and we wanted to do the same thing here too. Now that's impressive. You also notice that when the formula was applied in B, it affected the entire range, including the first entry. This confirms what was said in the previous slide. That is, when your data has a header row, Smartfill applies the formula from the first cell after the header to the last one in the range. Smartfill does not always know how to achieve what you mean. In the GIF shown, we can see that Smartfill handled the first name part easily. No problems there. But when it comes to the last name section, it could not find a way to get past the middle names to achieve what we want. It might have understood our pattern, but it couldn't find a way to accomplish it. This is a summary of some things to note about Smartfill. First, depending on the complexity of the pattern, Smartfill will require between 2 to 6 examples. Second, Smartfill may not always be able to recognize what you are trying to do and give suggestions yet. As was seen, mixed cases and middle names present a problem, but it is still being upgraded, so it should be able to do all that soon. And lastly, you can turn off Smartfill if you want. To do so, go to Tools on the menu bar and deselect Autocomplete. Let's see what we've learned so far in this lesson. In this lesson, we saw how to use Autofill to make data entry quicker and easier. We also looked at how to create, edit, and delete custom lists. And finally, we went over how to use Smartfill, its current capabilities, and how to disable it if we don't want to make suggestions.